You know, we're all taught the same thing in biology class, right? The building blocks of life are carbon, water, DNA. That's it. That's the recipe for everything from a tiny microbe to a blue whale. But what if that's just our recipe? What if the universe has a completely different cookbook, with ingredients we've never even thought of?
Go on, just for a second. Close your eyes. When I say alien, what's the first image that pops into your head? Is it a little green guy? Maybe something insect-like? Whatever it is, I bet it's basically a variation on us, right? A creature with a body, limbs, something made of solid stuff.
But this is the thing. What if we've been searching for the wrong signs this whole time? An independent researcher named J. Alfred has come up with this absolutely radical alternative. A hypothesis about a type of life that completely shatters every rule we thought we knew. And that's what we're diving into today.
So, get ready for this. The core of J. Alfred's theory is something called a dark plasma life form. Okay, so forget everything about cells, organs, and DNA. We're talking about beings made of complex, self-organizing magnetic plasma. Yeah, like the stuff stars are made of, or the energy you see in a bolt of lightning, but contained, stable, and, well, possibly intelligent.
This chart really puts it into perspective just how different we're talking. On our side, we've got molecules and cells. For them, magnetic plasma. Our bodies are dense, solid and liquid. Theirs would be incredibly low density, almost like a gas. We're stuck in pretty much one shape, but they'd be totally fluid, able to shapeshift at will. And here's the kicker. We're visible, right? They could be completely invisible. Okay, so if these things are so bizarre, what in the world would one even look like? Let's put on our speculative biologist hats for a minute and try to figure out the basic anatomy of a creature that's literally made of energy. J. Alfred suggests that in its default state, just chilling under gravity, it would probably take on a teardrop shape. You know, a lot like a candle flame, which is actually a type of plasma itself. And if it were out in the 0G of space, it would just relax into a perfect sphere. These aren't just random shapes. They'd be absolute most energy-efficient forms for a body like that to hold. And because its density is so incredibly low, it would have this unbelievable flexibility. It could contract down to a tiny point or expand outwards, even create temporary limbs or pseudopods, just like an amoeba does in a drop of water. It's not limited by a skeleton or skin. Its form is just a fluid expression of what it needs to do at that moment.
This is where it gets really fascinating. I mean, if you've got this low-density plasma creature floating around, how would you even perceive it? Well, according to J. Alfred's hypothesis, it all comes down to how it decides to play with light.
He proposes 4 possible modes. The first is what he calls arc mode. This is when the being cranks up its internal plasma frequency way, way high. The effect? It would reflect light like crazy, looking like a piece of polished, liquid metal just hanging in the air. Absolutely dazzling. Then you've got glow mode. If it dials that frequency down to a more moderate level, it stops being so reflective and starts to give off its own light. It would appear gently bright, sort of like a soft glowing orb or a ball of bioluminescence. And now, things start to get really weird. Welcome to dark mode. In this state, the creature would actually match its plasma frequency to the frequency of the light around it. And what happens when you do that? It perfectly absorbs all the light, appearing as a pitch-black shadow, literally a hole in the space in front of you. And last but definitely not least is transparent mode. By dropping its plasma frequency way down low, light just passes straight through it. It wouldn't bend the light or reflect it, it would just go through. The being would become completely and utterly invisible to our eyes. It's still there, we just have no way of seeing it. So we've got some idea of what they might look like, or not look like. But what do they actually do? I mean, how does a being that's basically a contained cloud of energy get around and, talk to its friends? Well, their most basic form of movement would be just pure buoyancy. J. Alfred theorizes they exist within a kind of ocean of ambient plasma, like the stuff filling our solar system. So to rise, they just expand, become less dense, and float up. To sink, they compress, become denser, and drift down. It's super elegant, kind of like how a submarine uses ballast tanks to navigate the ocean. But they wouldn't just be limited to floating around. Alfred's theory gets into some really cool, more advanced methods. They could generate electric winds to push themselves along, or even use jet propulsion by sucking in and shooting out particles, just like a squid. And get this, they could use electromagnetic forces to basically surf along the universe's magnetic field lines, like a maglev train on an invisible cosmic railway.
And communication? Yeah, forget spoken language. They might use acoustic waves, literally making their magnetic fields vibrate to send signals. Or maybe they could use electromagnetic waves for direct, long-range telepathy. But probably the wildest idea is the thought ball, a self-contained little bubble of information, a pure thought packaged up and sent from one being to another.
This idea, this thought ball, leads us right into the most mind-bending part of J. Alfred's entire hypothesis. Seriously, this is where we leave biology behind and start talking about the fundamental nature of reality itself.
The core concept is called a thought-modulated hologram. The theory basically says that a plasma being's mind, its actual thoughts, could directly project real, tangible, interactive three-dimensional images out into the world. And we're not talking about a simple illusion. We're talking about a projection that has actual substance.
So how on earth would that work? Well, J. Alfred proposes a few possible ways. The first is with plasmoid holograms. This would involve using tiny, super-energized blobs of plasma, called plasmoids, as physical pixels to literally paint images made of light and sound right into the air. Think of it like a living, breathing 3D plasma TV.
The second way is even wilder: plasmonic holograms. In this scenario, the electromagnetic waves from a thought would interact with the surrounding plasma environment to create these weird quasi-particles that are essentially half light and half matter. A hologram made this way would feel shockingly real if you tried to touch it. And the third method? Acoustic holograms. This one uses the actual physical force of sound waves. You know how sound vibrations can make cool patterns in sand on a plate? Well, imagine that, but in 3D. These beings could theoretically use focused sound to grab and arrange particles in their environment into any shape they can imagine. This leads to a truly staggering implication, which J. Alfred sums up perfectly right here. The ability to control mental activity is therefore a critical survival skill for plasma lifeforms. Just stop and think about that. Imagine living in a world where a stray thought, a fleeting moment of anger or fear, could instantly manifest as a physical threat. In that world, mental discipline isn't just a good habit, it's the key to survival.
So after all this wild speculation, what's the point? Why does this matter? Well, it forces us to look beyond our own carbon-based assumptions about life. It suggests there could be a universe out there where consciousness and reality aren't separate things, but are directly and instantly connected.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty heavy question to think about. If it's even remotely possible that for some form of life, a thought can instantly shape physical reality, what might that suggest about the much subtler connections between our own minds and the world we live in?